My close friend told me about this incident. I will refer to him as Cody. And I have altered the names of our spouses. Recently, I've heard stories about people's encounters with reptile males, as Cody refers to them, on your channel and others. Other individuals have called them different names too. In our conversation down in Port Charlotte, I will link this information closely with you. Additionally, we spoke about this topic over the phone to remind me of any details I might have forgotten. He has given me permission to share his story about what occurred at Land Between the Lakes many years ago. In 1994, Cody and his family relocated from Pennsylvania to Valley Station, Kentucky, my birthplace and essentially a suburb of Louisville. I was a sophomore in high school at the time. Typical, not very popular, but also not disliked. I had some friends, though none of them were particularly close to me. Eventually, I began to notice this new guy in a few of my classes, and we gradually got to know one another. Our friendship blossomed through early conversations and lighthearted banter, and it has remained strong ever since. Cody enlisted in the U.S. Army Infantry after high school, while I worked for Ford Motor Company for a while, before leaving to work with my now wife, Misty, in her photography studio. In time, Cody received an honorable discharge from the military following his original enlistment and a subsequent term of re-enlistment. He returned to Louisville in 2005, moving to the St. Matthews neighborhood. He spent 10 years there before relocating to north central Tennessee for an additional 2 years, finally settling in Port Charlotte, Florida, where he now resides with his wife, Annie. Cody and I communicate regularly through phone calls and frequent texts. It's common for one of us to casually reach out to the other. I should warn you that my friend has a tendency to use foul language. He is that way. Whatever is on his mind, he says it without hesitation. We all probably know someone like that. Since you likely have younger viewers on your channel, I will omit a few of his more colorful comments. In any case, he called me in early 2024 to ask if Misty and I would like to visit him and Annie in Port Charlotte for a short vacation. I told him we would be delighted to visit him and his wife, and we agreed that mid to late May would be ideal. Fast forward to mid-May, and Misty and I are now in Florida. We stayed at a condo just a few minutes away from where Cody and Annie live. After greeting each other and catching up, we shared a delicious meal in the dining room. Annie is quite the cook. While the women cleaned up the dishes, both of them knew we guys were looking forward to some one-on-one conversation. So we stepped outside and sat down in comfortable chairs opposite one another, just beyond Cody's screened-in porch by their swimming pool. After we settled in, he handed me a cold beer in a bottle. Suddenly, the look on his face changed from happiness to seriousness, almost instantly. He looked uneasy and conflicted. This wasn't the Cody I knew, and I wondered what was troubling him. I could read it plainly on his face. Cody looked off to the side, then back up to the house, and finally turned his gaze back to me. "Mike, do you believe in mother bleepin' Sasquatch?" he said, his tone rigid. Before I could process a reply, he quickly followed up with, "Do you think bleepin' monsters are out there? Because they're real, dude." He then took a swig of his beer and casually lit a cigarette before continuing. I answered him saying, "To be honest, I really haven't given it that much thought. What exactly are you trying to say, man?" I studied his face. He gave me a slight nod, knowing that I needed more information. With another downward tilt of his head, he proceeded with his story. Cody took a long drag off his cigarette, followed by another gulp of beer, and said, "You remember when I was living in Tennessee near Clarksville, dude?" "Yeah," I replied. "Of course I do." Cody continued. "Remember me telling you about the time I went exploring and camping at Land Between the Lakes?" I didn't speak. I just nodded in acknowledgement. "Well, I didn't tell you everything. I should have, but something made me hold it back, bro. Only 3 people know what happened to me that day. My parents and my wife. You're going to be the 4th person that I tell this to, dude. You feel me?" Quietly, I said, Yeah, okay, brother, so what happened there?" He clenched his jaw tightly, took a drag off the cigarette, and proceeded. Cody began. "First day, bleep, and uneventful as bleep. I had a pup tent pitched. My food and drink? Well, that crap was over in a cooler locked inside my ride. I explored a click out from my camp with a Henry Mare's leg, a .44 Magnum on a rig on my back, a 10mm Glock in a holster on my hip, 2 extra magazines, a folding tactical knife, a canteen of water, and some granola bars. It was just me and nature communicating with each other. Very chill on day 1, dude." Then he went on. "Anyway, I went back to my camp later, had a meal, drank some beer, and crashed out in the tent. Day 2, though. Day 2 was food bar. Absolutely the weirdest, scariest bleeping day of my life, bro. That was the day I found out bleeping Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever you want to call that bleeper is 100% legit real. Not only that, dude, I saw other things. Something even worse. At this point, Cody had finished both his beer and cigarette. He set the empty bottle down on the grass and yelled inside for Annie to bring him another, which she did before going back inside with Misty. Cody lit another cigarette and took another drink of beer before continuing his story. I was sitting in my chair, my head and body inclined forward so I could hear him better as he spoke. I then noticed Cody was trembling slightly, something I had never seen before. He went on though, and I looked up, locking my eyes with his. Next day, I decided to go northeast a few clicks to see what was up that way. Like the day prior, I had the same loadout, all the exact same stuff. Anyhow, dude, I found a game trail that, no diggity, no doubt, was being used by deer in the area, probably coyotes as well. Birds were singing in the trees. I saw some squirrels and heard them barking, right? All the usual things, my man. I decided, though, to get off the trail. That was a bad idea. I decided not to interrupt at this point, so I simply nodded. A universal cue to continue, and that is exactly what he did. I moved through some undergrowth and into an opening, maybe another half a click. There were a variety of sizes of trees present, primarily oaks, pines, and dogwoods. I spotted 2 big trees that had fallen and a large tree stump next to them as I strolled a little more, man. Then I heard a rumbling growl as I approached, coming from the stump and the fallen trees on both sides. There was not a visible line of sight from where I was, so I estimated about 40 meters. With my carbine in the pistol grip and my mind telling me that this was either a bobcat or a coyote, I was not afraid. I mean, it had to be. I moved up the remaining 4 feet or so until I reached the base of the stump, which was to my advantage because it was wider than I am. To see what I was dealing with, I really slowly, raised my head until only my eyes were staring over that stump. That was the moment I realized mother bleepin' monsters actually exist. I was now curious about the major revelation he was going to share with me. In addition to mentioning Bigfoot, Cody also hinted at the possibility of another entity. It was not long before I realized that it was a multiple types of something else. Hey guys, look at this massive, beautiful 15-foot tall reptile. Although I do not usually use profanity, I caught myself saying, "What the fudge?" Yes, I know I did not say fudge, but let's pretend I did for the sake of those who were listening. With excitement, Cody went on. Not only were there 2 stacks of bodies there, but there were also reptile guys. I will lay everything out for you, buddy. To my left, there was a heap, including a dead Bigfoot, along with various colors of fur, black, red, brown, and silver gray. There was a large, ugly mound of dead dogmen with various fur patterns and colors a few feet distant. I interrupted Cody and asked, How do you know this? What the hell is a dogman? Cody lost his cool and yelled, Mike, I was not finished yet. There was a dude in my team, okay? He continued. I thought he was crazy when he told me all about dogmen. It turns out was correct all along, but he never told me about reptilian guys, buddy. I apologized to him, and then inquired as to what had transpired. According to Cody, there were 2 reptilian beings behind the bodies, and a Bigfoot, around 8 feet tall, stood between them. The head came up to their stomach area, and one had a hand over its chest and stomach area, completely covering it. The Bigfoot seemed to be struggling to get away, crying and growling. Then the reptile dude that was holding it tightly bent down and bit past the arm, the shoulder, and down to below the stomach. He killed that Bigfoot, Mike. Cody paused and sighed deeply, taking another drink of his beer and a pull on his cigarette before he continued. He had some tears in his eyes but wiped them away. He wasn't a person who liked to display what he felt could be perceived as weakness. There was a 3rd reptile dude behind and to the side of the others, he said. This one was holding a female Bigfoot around her throat. She was 7 feet tall, and yeah, I know it was a female because I could see her breasts. She stood there and didn't seem to try and fight back, like she knew this was her fate and that was that. The reptile dude was more than twice her height, so I don't know what she could have done, bro. Also, I have to tell you this part, there was some type of glowing. I'm not sure what you call it exactly. A portal, maybe? Some kind of shimmering portal that was close to the reptile dude that was farthest back. Cody paused again, and I didn't know if he had more to say. Finally, I asked, Can you give a description of these reptile dudes, my brother? He exhaled. lowered his head a bit, and then raised his eyes to meet mine again. Then he said, "Yeah, 15 bleeping feet tall, head like a bleeping velociraptor, or something close to that. The hands have talons similar to those of a hawk bill knife. I had a close look at those. Compared to the blade of my SOG combat knife, they are far longer. Indeed, it is true. From what I could see, they had dark eyes. They too possessed green bodies, but the scales covering their stomach and chest were filthy yellow or gold and overlapped. These were massive, thick, and reminiscent of the heavy, tactical plate body armor found inside armored carriers. They also swung about with enormous bleeping tails." "That sounds terrifying, buddy," I said. "Yes, that was," he answered, nodding. I backed out of there as discreetly as possible and headed back to my campground as quickly as my legs could carry me. I kept a close eye on my surroundings, but I never heard or saw any indications of a chase. "How about your weapons?" I inquired. "Indeed, but what about them?" Cody retorted. "I'm not sure if I really had the mare's leg out, and the Glock might have saved my life if I had needed to use it. In any case, I arrived on time, quickly put on my tin up, threw my bleep into the vehicle, and got the bleep out of there, dude." That was the information Cody shared with me. Tell you what, I know him very well. Cody's not the kind to make stuff up or lie. I will believe him if he says that it did happen. Conversing with him on an intimate human level, while gazing into his eyes, yes, I take his words at face value. I can also inform you based on our follow-up phone conversations and the in-person visit in May. I can sense that he is somewhat worn down by the experience. I think that part of what troubles him is that he is not really sure where these creatures come from or what their overall goal is. The reason these objects seem to be killing Sasquatch and Dogman in the first place, as well as the reason their carcasses were piled up, have also been major topics of discussion. I thought perhaps these creatures reside at the top of the cryptid hierarchical structure and remove other cryptids that draw too much attention. Maybe they do the bidding of other creatures with more authority than themselves. I don't know. It's pure conjecture, but he and I do share some of these thoughts, and I believe it's a type of therapy for him talking about it. I mentioned to him that I believe they move the bodies of the other deceased cryptids through the portal that he mentioned, since from various videos that I've watched, bodies rarely seem to be discovered. "Thanks, Nance." Signed, Mike. "Have you had an encounter with the king or the queen of the forest and you'd like to have it narrated on this channel? Well, if so, send me an email with all the details."